This is Make It Mentionable. I'm Alyssa Patmos, and this is the show about being human in a world that encourages us to be robots. I invite you to join me as we journey through the mess, the magic, and the mania in between, because what we can talk about, we can manage. This honest conversation extravaganza includes free-flowing conversations and high doses of vulnerability to remind you that you aren't alone. No topic is off limits, and episodes are designed to leave you smarter, aka more self-aware than when you came. I am so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Make It Mentionable. I'm your host, Alyssa Patmos, and today I am here with Erika Lyremark, who has so many things that we can talk about. I'm so excited that you're joining me. Erika, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Erika Lyremark. And the short story, you wanted the short story, not the long story. The short story is I was a stripper for 9 years out in Seattle, Washington during the 1990s. I left that industry after 9 years. I went to co-create a really successful multi-million-dollar commercial real estate investment company with my father. And I left my position as managing partner there 10 years ago to pursue my own business coaching consultancy. And now I specialize in helping women really become bold, editorial, and decisive in their brand and their marketing and their products and services and their sales process. And I also wrote a best-selling book called Think Like a Stripper: Business Lessons to Up Your Confidence, Attract More Clients, and Rule Your Market. You can find me on my online home at dailywhip.com or on Instagram at dailywhip or on TikTok at dailywhip.
All the places. I love it. I told you the story how when I was in transition moving about a year ago, I had your book just in a pile of stuff at my mom's house. And I had gone to Denver, but I needed to leave some stuff there. And so my mom calls me, she's like, I'm stealing this book. And it was Think Like a Stripper. So my mom stole it and then integrated some of it for her business. She runs her own business as well and loved it. And so then I ended up having to order another copy because
that's awesome. I thought you were going to say you put it in the recycling bin, and I would say that's awesome as well. Recycling bin needs good items in there as well.
No, so she stole it, and it was a fun moment. So one of the things that I love about how you talk about things is this decisiveness. So speaking of my mother, the running joke, like my entire life, like my mom and I have been indecisive, not everything, just in certain areas. But so over the years, I've had to learn to cultivate discernment and decisiveness. And you've been a part of that. And so how has your journey with decisiveness been? Because you're one of the most decisive women I know. And so did it start out that way? What's your journey with decision?
That's a great question. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of when I started making decisions about who I was going to be when I was standing at a bus stop and I saw a guy with a mohawk riding by on his dirt bike. And I was like, I want that. That is who I want to be. And I was very attracted. So this was probably, I was probably in 7th grade. So I don't know, I graduated in 89. So whatever that is, 1983. That's when I started the journey to be myself. And actually even before that, in the 3rd grade, I was very attracted to Vogue magazine. So it's always been a mixture of high design and street style. That's always been my vibe. And, but when you're in 3rd grade and you're living off of a 50 cent a week allowance, you don't have a lot of money to buy clothes. So, I started getting into vintage clothes, and I learned how to sew so I could make my own stuff or alter clothing that I found. And that's when I decided that that's who I wanted to be and that's how I wanted to look. I never had a mohawk. but it's always been, again, mix of high design, street style. I definitely have like Gothic influences. And so I think it started then. I've actually never really thought about like when that journey started, because I know when my love of high fashion started, that was in the 3rd grade. And it was definitely when that guy rode by on his dirt bike with a mohawk that I was like, that's my thing. That's what I want.
The 3rd grade was a pivotal year for me too, because I remember growing up, people would ask me like, what do you want to be? And I was like, I don't know. I just want high heels and to carry, like in my mind, I had like black heels, like carrying a portfolio and just like being able to walk fast places, like the feeling, like the essence of something. And
I love that.
So
I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's all good.
Oh, I was going to say, I always in my head, I was, penthouse. I was always single. I always had a fabulous, famous boyfriend. And I was like in the fashion industry, bossing people around, being in charge, and just living a very glamorous life. And so a lot of that has come true.
Minus the single part.
Yeah, minus the single part. Well, my husband is fabulous. But we have a very independent relationship. So, but it works really well for us. And I wanted somewhere where I could be myself, but I could also be, extremely independent. We've been married for 16 years. We still don't combine our income. Mm-hmm. So I pay for things, he pays for things. I mean, we definitely have a system that's worked out, but it's definitely my money and your money. And it's great because I don't ever want to ask someone permission if I can buy something.
Right. So this is Make It Mentionable. We talk about all the things. So if you're willing to share in regards to that, how did that decision process look? When you're first getting together, you're getting married, trying to decide if you're going to combine finances or not. I don't think this is one of the things I love when we talk about decision. And I lump discernment in there because that word like leads to better decisions for me. It requires intentionality. And I think a lot of times, we see people just doing something so unconsciously or because that's the way it's always been done. So like a lot of people think, you get married, you combine finances. So how did that decision process look for you?
I don't remember exactly what happened, but we lived together for a couple years before we got engaged. And so it was just never a thing where, we were dating, we didn't combine our money. It was just never a thing. And once we got married, I have a strong business background and I believe every partnership starts with paperwork. And so it was, will you marry me? And then it was like, let's talk about the prenup. Mm-hmm. And it was just, it was never even discussed as an option. Like, oh, we should combine our money. Like neither of us wanted that. So he's just as independent as I am. So I think that's probably why it works so well.
I love it. So on this journey of decision making, obviously we come to different points where it can be harder to make a decision. And so I know at one point you had to make the decision of if you were going to work with your dad or not. And I have a similar story of like, okay, I still say my dad is one of the hardest clients I've ever had to earn. And so what was it like at that point, or what did you learn from making that decision?
It was awful. Let me just tell you, it was awful. So I quit stripping in August of 2001. And the dot-com bubble had already burst, living in Seattle. And so businesses were already, things were already not as good as they could have been. And then 9/11 happened. And it was a very scary time for everyone across America. And everything just, if you remember that, everything just like froze. And all these companies were on hiring freezes. And I wanted to get back into the design field. So I have an apparel design degree. And then I went on and I thought that I was going to become a women's rights lawyer. And so I got a women's studies degree. And then I was like, oh no, I want to do business and I want to live in Hong Kong. And so I got an unofficial minor in China studies. And I would say that's an area that I haven't been decisive in my career. That's been definitely the biggest challenge for me ever, is career, for sure. And so I didn't really have a resume. Like, I was a really good student. I knew how to hustle and I was very self-motivated. But I didn't have like your traditional resume where I, had this great, these great sources and references. And I didn't have like a lot of volunteer work. Like, I just didn't do that stuff. I was either chain smoking in a strip club or, with my glasses on with my whatever, my face in a book. And I didn't know what I was going to do, because all these companies that I wanted to work for, Nordstrom, what's that brand name? God, I can't think of the name of it, but they were very popular in the 80s. Not Ferragamo. Sergio Valente. I don't know if you know them at all, but they had these really cool jeans and they were making a comeback. And I had like 10 pairs of these Sergio Valente jeans. And they were kind of like mid-waist. And then I love flares, and they were flares, and they just had like these super cool pockets. And they had a location in Seattle, and I definitely wanted to work there. But again, I really hadn't been in the fashion industry for like 4 years, because I had been getting my women's studies degree. And I just was kind of all over the place and was really indecisive about what I wanted to do. So I was in a really bad place. I had sold almost everything I owned. This is back in the 2000, where books and CDs were still a valuable commodity. You could go to a bookstore and be like, hey, will you buy my books? And you could sell CDs. And so I sold almost all of those things, and clothes and furniture. And I was down to my last $200, and, not stripping. And this church had actually, long story short, this church was actually helping me out, giving me money. They were paying my rent. And I was like, I can't keep accepting money from them. This is totally unacceptable. Like, this should not be happening to me, but it was. And so earlier that summer, when I did have some money, I purchased a plane ticket back to Minneapolis, where I'm from. And so I got on the plane and I thought, well, at least I'll be able to eat for free there. My parents won't let me starve. So I was eating split pea soup with my dad. And he said to me, do you want to, what do you think about moving back to Minneapolis and rehabbing this building with me? And I was like, this is the last thing that I want to be doing. Living in Minneapolis, I moved out of my mom's home when I was still in high school. And I was like, I will never live there, and I will never work for my father, because he also had a commercial roofing company. And here I was, and I'm like, it felt like it was my only option. So I was like, okay, well, I'm really committed to not stripping ever again, because I'm just wasting my potential. And I had started to drink, horrific amounts of alcohol on a nightly basis. My motto was, if I can see straight, I haven't had enough to drink. And I was like, I have to do something, because I'm about ready to become a drug addict, because I don't know how else to escape this pain. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And he said, you have to commit for a year. And I was like, all right. And I'm like, but in my head, I'm thinking, I'm out of here after a year. I'm going to move to New York or LA. And so within 3 weeks, I had packed up all my stuff and left my home in my city that I'd known for 11 years. It was a very quick decision. It was almost instant. And within 3 weeks, my life was completely different. And that's how that decision came about. It was not easy. It was not glamorous. It was not what I wanted to do. But I was so committed to never stripping again. And I was also concerned about staying in Seattle, because I knew how tempting it would be to go back to the club. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I knew how to work the crowd, and you know what I mean? It's like, if I needed money, I could make it. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, because it's suffocating me.
The relationship to commitment when we're making decisions, it's so interesting and fascinating to me, because there are some decisions that have been so crystal clear and easy for me to make. Like, I remember I decided I wanted a tattoo, and then 2 weeks later I have my first tattoo, and it's like huge on my arm. And for me, that decision was almost instantaneous. And then other ones, there's this piece of commitment in here. And I think so many people say that they know what they want, but I don't actually think a lot of people intentionally spend enough time truly cultivating their wants and to a way that they can articulate it that then makes decision easier. Do you experience the same thing?
I completely agree. And I think that's why most people don't get what they want, even though they're doing all the affirmations and the mantras and the visioning but they don't really, it's vague and it's fluffy. And I absolutely believe in miracles, and I believe in magic, and I believe all sorts of cool stuff can come your way. But I also believe in the power of personal choice and personal responsibility and taking action to create the world that you want to live in for yourself. And most people don't get what they want because they're not clear on what they want. Or if they're like, yeah, I kind of like that, but I don't want to be the person that it would require me to be that. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense, because after you told the story about your dad, the other piece that I wanted to tap into is, you and I have worked together for a year. I've been a student of yours in different capacities, and we talk about identity a lot. And so it seems like, in the drop of a hat, all of a sudden your identity shifts, and it's like, okay, I'm no longer a stripper and I'm committed to that. But now you have this new thing. And at first, like, that must have seemed somewhat uncertain. And I think people get hung up clinging so tightly to identities that we have had in the past that we limit the possibility of being able to see that. I mean, tomorrow we could change our identity if we really wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that did work in my favor is that when I quit stripping and I went into building this commercial real estate company, the thing that worked in my favor is that I was in charge. And so I'm very comfortable being in charge. Like, I'm uncomfortable, and I actually do a worse job if I'm not in charge, because I'm not really clear what's expected of me, or how to do my thing, or like my ideas don't expand. I don't look for better ways because I don't look for better ways to do something because I'm not in charge. And so that worked for me, but it was difficult for me because there wasn't that sense of glamour and intrigue in what I was doing. And so that part was definitely missing for me. So I think it's about identity. So one of the things that I've taken away is, do I still get to be the person that I love to be, even if like the exterior circumstances aren't exactly the same? Like, being in charge is super, super important to me. Like, I'd rather be in charge and work in a less than ideal environment than be super glamorous and not be in charge of my own day and the way that I do my work. Like, that's a bigger value for me. So I think it's really weighing what are your most important values and really sticking with that.
Yeah. And one of the other things we talk about a lot is being able to ask for what you want. And so I think, like, until we're clear on what we want, we can't ask for it. But that's something that you've done so well. I mean, I don't think it doesn't sound like you had to, like, you necessarily asked for it with your dad, but you took it. But I know there have been so many other scenarios or stories that you've told me where it's like, no, like, our power lies in our ability to ask for what we want. And I think our ability to be decisive is directly correlated with our ability to then be able to ask for help. And I think our level of commitment is thrown somewhere in there too. So, speaking about identity, there becomes all these decision points in our lives where we have this option to choose if we're going to step into a new version of ourselves. And so there seems to be this direct correlation to our commitment levels, our ability to be decisive, and being able to ask for what we want as a result of those things. So how do you see these interplaying together?
Well, I think you need to, I always look at, again, like, who's the person I want to be? And then what kind of exterior circumstance is going to support me in that? And then bringing it down to, the rest is really experimentation to like, let's, talk about with marketing, right? And so there's all different ways that you can position yourself with your marketing. But really asking yourself, does this marketing align with how I want to move through the world and how I want to be perceived and moving through the world? And is that a direct expression of the most authentic version of myself with that, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. And I like that when you say exterior circumstances, it just makes me think of our environments. And people so often forget how important our environment is in our ability to be who we want to be. And so I know for you, like a huge thing is you identify as a minimalist in business, and your house reflects that, right?
Yes, absolutely. I try to own as little as possible.
So for you, minimalism then became this way of being, and then it's reinforcing the decision in every area of your life, I would imagine, right?
Well, one of the reason I chose the minimalist path is just a quick story. It started in 1995, and I was watching an episode of the now disgraced Charlie Rose, and he had a CEO of some major company on there. And unfortunately, I don't remember who the guest was, and this is like pre-internet, basically. But the guest was talking about how in Western philosophy, the philosophy is that we are born an empty box and we need to fill it with who we are. And in Eastern philosophy, we are born a full box and we need to empty it to become more of who we are. Mm-hmm. And I looked around my apartment and I thought, oh my God, I have no idea who I am. I mean, it was just, I was a maximalist then. I was like the ultimate maximalist. I mean, I had a calendar of what I wore on every day of the year. And my goal was always to not repeat an outfit more than once a year. And because of my ability to sew and alter clothes and make things, like it was part of my craft. It was like it was a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. And I decided I am ready for a new adventure in my life and this has got to go. And so it started with cleaning out my physical clutter. And it really is a practice because I love to shop. Like, I'm the least likely candidate to be a minimalist because I love shopping. I mean, I look at shopping sites almost every single day. My husband will walk by like, what are you doing? I'm working. He's like, Net-a-Porter is not working. I'm like, no, I'm doing research on their branding. And he's like, whatever. So, but the thing that's helped me the most is this, in recent years, I came up with this thought, a viewpoint, and it was, if I fully utilize everything I own, then I always feel like I have enough. And part of the reason I became a maximalist is because there was a period in my life where I didn't feel like I had enough clothes. And so I would pretend to be sick. So I wouldn't have to go to school because I didn't want to wear the same outfit. And so, I had a very long, I was sick a lot, quote unquote, sick a lot. But the truth is, like, I just don't want to go to school because I did feel like I didn't have enough clothes to wear. So that
Can you repeat
really helped me.
That mantra again? Can you repeat what it is? It was so powerful.
When I fully utilize everything I already have, I always feel like I have enough. So go ahead.
I just want to add in there, for me, that journey was around sweets. Like, it's a running joke that I'm addicted to. Now it's hazelnut butter cups, but it used to be peanut butter cups. And so for me, I had to switch it to like, my life is already sweet enough, because when I felt like when I felt like my life wasn't sweet enough, then I would go to sweets more often. And so now, like, I don't eat sugar at all. And that there were just some parallels for me there that seemed, it just reinforced pieces of my story from that too. So
I love that. Like, finding that thing that's missing for you. And for me, it was about feeling fulfilled. That's like, I want to feel full inside. And the truth is, like, when we think of decisiveness, the truth is, like, if no one's looking, I'm wearing the same Lululemon leggings. I'm wearing the same white slides. I'm wearing one of like 3 oversized cropped hooded sweatshirts or sweaters. And that's my uniform. And then I do have a lot of handbags. So I'm not a minimalist with handbags or puffy coats, but everything else, like I literally can own the same pair of Lululemon leggings. And I'm like, I will wear them for like a week straight. Like I don't care. So that's really helped me a lot. It's helped curb my shopping addiction. And it is a fun challenge. How do I, again, it's like picking up furniture. It's like, okay, like the couch behind me, that was like a 2-year process to find that couch. And I want to marry my couch. I love it so much. And, it's modular, so you can break it up. So, when we move to our next place, we can position it in different styles. We can order more pieces. So it's like, I'm in it for the long haul with that baby. And so it just causes me to be more intentional because I hate spending money on something that I don't utilize. It bums me out. So I only want like things that I'm totally obsessed with and things that I'm going to really, really use.
Well, and clutter can be so distracting. Clutter can, obviously if our closet is cluttered, or even if our computer is cluttered, when I look at my downloads folder, sometimes I get serious anxiety. And clutter, I think, can subconsciously lead to decision fatigue, where we're not even able to make the more powerful decisions because we're spending way too much freaking time on all these micro decisions just from having things cluttered.
Yeah, absolutely. And this translates into one's business and ideas. I'm definitely someone who has had idea clutter. I remember I partnered with a woman, her name's Betty Jean Bell, and she helped me launch my first big course back in 2010. And she said to me, if you throw one more idea at me, I'm out. Like, we're done. I was like, yes, ma'am. And she goes, you need to get an idea box. And I said, what's that? She's like, it's like a physical box that you put all your ideas in. And so I would write down my ideas on a piece of paper and, they would go in the idea box because I am a hyper creative. Like I can't stop at concept and everywhere I go, I think of how something could be stronger, faster, better, more efficient, more beautiful, more practical, just better design. Like I just can't stop. It's my gift, but that can move into overkill. And so with the idea box, that helped curb some of those things. And then now 10 years full-time into my business, I have way less idea clutter. And I mean, you've known me for a few years. You've seen me go through some changes, and I'm about to go through another big change as well in my business. And, but it's all part of, editing down and getting rid of the clutter because, I have another mantra, and that simplicity sets you free. And it's one of the hardest things to achieve, to be so simple and to be so satisfied with what you have.
Well, it's the opposite of what the proverbial they, are marketing to us all the time. You go into most stores and then as you're checking out, theoretically, you have everything you need already. But then like, here's 50 candy bars and here's this other product. And oh, do you need a gift card? And we're just like bombarded by all, and on social, we're bombarded with other people's ideas constantly. So it takes a bunch of intention to be able to curate an existence that is simple. So do you have tips on that?
I would say only go to stores that you really love to go to. I hardly ever go to Target anymore. Like that's definitely a place. I'm from Minneapolis, so that's the capital of Target. But I don't go to Target very much anymore. And I spend my time going to other places because that's definitely one of those places where I'm like, ooh, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. So I really try to, and also, researching brands. Like I'm very clear on like, I have a hair care routine that I love and products that I love. So I'm not tempted by other things. And I really research brands. I research what I spend my money on and who they are. And so just being intentional with how you spend your money is also a great way to help yourself with that.
I think sometimes we get when we avoid wanting to deal with emotions, or when we avoid wanting to, sit in discomfort, like the condition of being human is we go through periods of suffering. And so when we don't want to sit in that, that's like when we can start to spin. That's where like I can always tell the state of my mind based on if my desk is organized or not. And if it gets too cluttered, like if my desk is cluttered, I'm like, my mind is too cluttered. Like, what do I need to clear out? And so I love what you're saying about the relationship between simplicity and satisfaction. And I almost feel like it's a radical act in today's world to be satisfied with your life.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, it's not, I'm definitely not anti-consumerism, and I'm definitely not anti-shopping. But it's really getting intentional about, I have this concept of better less. It's like, save up for the handbag that you want, save up for the shoes that you want. Even if you have less, you're going to really, really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
A pair of Lululemon leggings are like $110. But if you wear them every day, like I do, like you need 2 pairs for the whole year and you're set. Like they don't wear out. So, spend your money, invest it on products and services and companies that you really, really love and adore and respect.
I think this is the perfect segue into one of your specialties, and something that I know you're fascinated with, which is assessing, the types of brands that people fall in love with. And one of the things that you talk about is how brands have an opportunity to own their viewpoints. And so as I hear you talking about this shopping experience and this intentional curation of your life and the materials that you have, the things you own, then really the companies who are selling to us, they have a chance to tap into that value. So what's been the journey getting to this like bold stance you take on people having strong, sharp viewpoints?
Well, I started digging deep into my work on viewpoints 10 years ago, because I was, moving full time into this business, and I was definitely struggling selling something intangible. Where I sold something like lap dance is very easy to sell. It took work, but people were like, "What's a lap dance? Why do I need one?" To selling commercial real estate, and people, you obviously, you either needed a 5,000 square foot space or you didn't. So it was very different for me to sell something that was tangible. And, there's a few things that helped me succeed in my business from the get-go. And one of those is developing my viewpoints. And, before I started my coaching consultancy, which really started in like 2005, 2006, I had taken some sales courses on how to sell, what I'm doing. And I'd worked with some sales coaches, and it was so sleazy and so slimy. And I'm like, I'm not that person. And I'm never going to be that person. And this feels like the time that I went to New Orleans and I got stuck in a timeshare presentation, and I was insulted and more horrified, and it was awful. And I'm like, I can't be that person. And that kind of selling, very transactional, like not caring about your customers, not caring if this is actually a really good fit for them, that doesn't work in the world of commercial real estate. When our tenants would move in, they would basically become our roommates, and you don't want someone that felt like they're forced to move in with you. It's a horrible relationship. And so I wanted to, create a long-term vision for our company and not accept everybody who wanted to rent there. Like, is their business a good fit for the type of building that it is? Are they going to be a good fit with the neighbors? And I just couldn't see myself selling this way. So I came up with these viewpoints on how I want to sell, and I call it transformational selling. Mm-hmm. And it should be every sales experience that you have, you should feel good about and excited about it. Like, when I shop at Nordstrom, I'm never worried that I'm going to be pressured into buying something. They're never, tackling me at the front of the store, telling me about like what's on sale and what the latest trends are and blah, 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 blah. I shop with complete confidence, knowing that if I don't like what I've purchased, if I change my mind, now I have 45 days to return it, knowing full well that I'm going to be back shopping at Nordstrom, probably the next week we'll be buying something. So that really changed my work. And when I saw what it did for my own business, and I saw how much women entrepreneurs, and I just say women because that's my client base, is female founded brands, is I saw how much that my viewpoints on selling, how much they liked those viewpoints. And I thought, I've got to have a course on selling. And so I created a course on selling, and I had hundreds of women go through it, and they loved selling the way that I taught them to sell. And that really, developing viewpoints has been definitely my number one go-to. In, the thing we talked about is like, people don't get what they want because they don't really know what they want. They have this vague, fluffy idea, but just like, it's almost like you need to market your idea to the universe. And just like, if you're marketing something that's vague and fluffy and people don't know what it is, it won't succeed. And the same thing with the universe. If you are marketing something, if you're like, I don't know what I want, blah, 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 blah. But if you get very, very specific, you become a lot more creative, you become a lot more bold, and you realize if you just push yourself just a little bit more, you'll be able to get that thing that you want, but you have to be very specific about it. So the work on viewpoints, it helped me. And then I saw how much my customers needed to develop their own viewpoints, because they were good at what they did or they do, but they hadn't really fleshed it out. Like, what's their angle? So they were more generalists. And I'm always working to get my clients to this place of specialization. When you specialize, you can go deep into a topic that you're obsessed with, and you can expand and expand and expand and expand, and you just get better and better at that, versus kind of like all these general things that you may or may not be that great at.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've noticed, even in being able to express my viewpoints, which like I get to do on the show, which is fun, but that was a journey getting to this point, because there's the recognition of like, okay, like, what is my viewpoint? But for so many of us, we've been conditioned out of thinking our opinions are okay, or like they're worthy of being heard. And so there's this safety component where it had to become safe in my body to feel like I could share those viewpoints. Have you always been as bold as you are?
Yes.
I love it.
I was born bold.
I love it. So I think one of the magical things about the work that you do is it's not just about like spewing one out there. It's about crafting a viewpoint and truly putting thought into what do you think? And we talk about it largely in a business context, especially since that's what you do. But I think it's massively important for life in general. If you go around, again, not knowing who you are, not knowing what your viewpoints are, then that's how we end up feeling invisible. That's how we end up just like, here, I'm blending in with the wallpaper.
Yeah. And it's, again, the viewpoints, it's, so I've always been bold, but I've had to train myself to be editorial and decisive. So and that's ongoing, again, because I have so many ideas. I constantly have to ask myself, what's my viewpoint on this? So even my relationship with my husband, we had already been dating for a while, but we were like dating, not dating, mostly friends with benefits. And when I was decided, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for a serious relationship. And I want someone who is committed to the relationship, because I had been in all sorts of relationships where it was either kind of like an open style relationship, or they weren't committed to spending time with me. So it was kind of like last on the plate. And I also wanted a relationship where I could be fulfilled, like I could be my wild, crazy self and not feel like I had to hide who I am. Those are the things that are the most important to me. And obviously chemistry needs to be there. They have to be a decent person, but I feel like that's just like, duh, you know what I mean? Like, you don't like, oh, I'm purposely looking to date an asshole who treats me like crap. So like those things happened to be there. And once I was like, these are the things that I'm committed to, I realized, oh my God, I already know this guy. I know this person. He gives me all of these things. And so then I shifted into, I'm really committed to this person. And so that shifted. And again, like once we commit, we will see there's a good chance that you already have everything you need to get started on that thing. So like, that's one example. And it even goes to, I don't know. I'm just thinking about like people come over and they make fun of my refrigerator because there's hardly ever anything in it. and so I've decided, well, you know what, if there's nothing in it, at least I'm going to arrange it beautifully.
Yes.
So I'm constantly in the refrigerator, like organizing the strawberry Perrier cans, and, making sure that my food storage containers are the most beautiful ones in the market. And it's beautiful and it's clean. And like, yep, the free fridge there's not a lot in there, but it's beautiful. And so now I have viewpoints when I want all of my cupboards, closets, drawers to be beautiful. I want to open it up and be like, wow, this chick, she's got it going on. She is organized and she knows what she wants. So viewpoints go the full gamut from home organization to nail polish, right? So I'm like, I just discovered these plastic press-on nails. So I wear these all the time. They're like $6 a package. They last about a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. And then I go and get my toes done with the gel shellac. And because I can't always get like the color of the nails to the same as the toes, I just stick with my favorite colors, which are red, black, dark purple, white, and nude. So there's only 5 color choices, and then it's easy. Another viewpoint. Like I don't need to go the full rainbow, even though I love all nails and all colors because I love manicures and things like that. I don't need to do that. It's one of my viewpoints. Like here's the rotation. These are the only choices of colors you get.
Something that's coming up for me as you're talking is how you talk about viewpoints, where it's communicating something about you that people can then, either decide that they like, decide that they don't. And I think that that's a really important distinction because in the world that we live in, it's so divisive and people are really quick to have an opinion. And I think there's a big difference between, just the way we traditionally think about opinion versus what you're saying with truly cultivating a viewpoint. And so is this something that you've thought about it as well, the difference between viewpoints and opinions?
Yeah, I say that viewpoints are based on your experience and your expertise. And and again, depending on the context, but they solve a problem either for you or for someone else, so like your customer base. So like there's a lot of things with politics and things like that. And I don't know everything about everything. So if we take at, just one issue, right, that everybody debates about, like I'm probably not an expert in that area. So I'll just have like my general opinion. And then I'm open to I'm always open to hearing what other people have to say, but it's different than an opinion. This is like, an opinion is like, oh, do you like this dress or that dress? Should I wear my hair like this or like that? But a viewpoint is something that you're willing to get behind and you're willing to fight for. So it's different than an opinion. I mean, it could be the same, but with the way that I talk about viewpoints, it's definitely more expansive. It's something that you're building your life's work on.
Yeah, viewpoints seem to me then as this opportunity to, again, like communicate something about who you are. But then it's also, I talk about claiming your experience. Like I'm always trying to get people to claim their experience because when we don't share our stories, then again, we end up being more invisible. And so for me, the way that you talk about viewpoints always seems like this way for someone to claim their experience. And rather than it just being sort of like, oh, I flippantly have an opinion about this, but like, there's always another side. I can always get more information. It leads to debate. Like a viewpoint is such like it becomes such a personal thing that it's not really up for debate. It's like, no, this is me, this is my viewpoint. And like, this is my personal truth. And I think when people get so aligned in communicating from their personal truth, they're more emotionally clear in any conversation. And so then going back to knowing what you want and getting what you want, then it's way easier to ask for what you want. And I love that you do this work, because I just want to drill this in. I just want to drill it in so much, because otherwise we're just flat. We're just like floating around in indecision constantly. And then we're just taking in everyone else's version of success and not defining what actually is going to feel good to us. And then we're just waiting for that to happen instead of being able to recognize, exactly like you said, with the list with your husband, wait, this is in front of me.
It makes it so much easier when you know how to think. It makes it so much easier. And it's not about being rigid. It's about, this is best for me because it makes my life and my business simple. And it makes me the best at what I do.
So how in general, can you expand on that some? How does someone, whether it's in their business or in their life, how does working to cultivate viewpoints simplify things?
So again, we'll go back to, I don't know, let's say how you grocery shop.
Okay.
And so some people, like I have viewpoints, and again, and viewpoints could also be part of your value system. So for me, when I'm grocery shopping, I buy organic as much as possible. I buy grass-fed beef as much as possible. I buy, free-range chicken. I'm like, like if you shop at Whole Foods, they have the rating of the animal welfare. So I'm always looking to spend on how was the animal treated. I'm not a vegan or vegetarian, but I'm always looking to spend the extra money for animal welfare. And so other people animal welfare is not important to them. And so they're not thinking about that. And again, I realize like I'm very fortunate that I am in an income bracket where I can afford, those things. But it could be something else for someone. It's like, that's just where, I can only create viewpoints from where I am in my life. So that would be an example right there. And it just makes my decision-making easier. Like I'm like, where's the grass fed? Like that is the kind of meat that I purchase.
Right. And the thing I love about the examples that you just gave is I think we have viewpoints, but sometimes I've seen you challenge people to come up with theirs, and it's like, and it's this freeze moment where it's like, wait, I don't know what my viewpoints are. But when you give examples like that, we have them all around us, but it's a matter of like bringing them to conscious awareness so that they start helping us in our decision-making process. And it's that commitment level. Like when we decide to commit to that viewpoint, then everything becomes simpler. Similar to you, so Jeb and I just bought a quarter of a cow because I want grass-fed, grass-finished beef as well, especially like different things with estrogen in my body. Like it's really important to me. And so I wanted to not just be able to go and cherry pick the cut of meat as well. So we decided to buy from a local rancher in Colorado, a quarter of a cow. I'm going to have like 96 pounds of meat in my freezer. But that is an example of a viewpoint. Like even when I'm grocery shopping, like I don't go really down the middle aisles. I stay on the perimeter and like I have a viewpoint around like, okay, I shop the perimeter of the store. I have, so many viewpoints on communication and healthy relationships and the types of things I want to put in my body. And I think that the power lies in putting those somewhere, like writing them down, getting in touch with what our viewpoints actually are, because then that process, like it really became clear to me through this call, like the process of getting to that decision easier through the commitment to your viewpoint. And in a world of so much uncertainty, like the commitment piece to me is gold.
Yes. And then it's easy to align yourself with, friends, romantic relationships, business partnerships on what someone else's viewpoint, like, do we have the same viewpoints on work ethic, et cetera? Like, what is your work ethic? What are your viewpoints around this? What do you feel about this? It gives you a commonality, and it gives you a place to ground yourself and make that connection.
So if someone is thinking about this, they're listening to it, and we have somehow roundabout convinced them, like simplicity is the ultimate sexiness, and that when we can put systems and viewpoints into place, decision-making gets easier. What are some of the ways, or do you have any questions that help bring out where people's viewpoints already lie?
So, anytime that let's take personal life first, and then let's talk about business and career. So personal life would be anytime that you need to make a decision, or even if you're thinking about, what do I really want for my life? Develop a viewpoint on that. And so, like, I have a viewpoint on, I don't like taking care of things. Like, I'm not very domestic, and I don't want to spend my weekends mowing a yard. Chad and I used to own a house. We don't own a house anymore. It's so much better for our relationship. If we buy a house again, it's going to have a very tiny, tiny yard, hopefully just a courtyard. And so it's that kind of thing of, what is my viewpoint on this? What's going to be best for me? And having an honest conversation with yourself around, this is what I really value. And this is like looking at the consequences, good of bad, of having all of these things, or the things that you really want, or the things that you want to attract into your life. Like, I watch, I follow all the Kardashians on Instagram, and whenever they do an unboxing of something, I'm like, oh my God, aren't they so overwhelmed with all of the stuff? Like, I would lose my mind. I mean, they must get like boxes. They must get like a truckload of swag every single day sent to them. Like, I would lose my mind. I'd be like, I can't make a decision on that. I would just like give it all away, And so really picturing yourself in that, if you make that decision, is that really who you are? Or, like, again, I'm a huge fan of using your imagination, but really use your imagination to cultivate what is a true representation of you versus a fantasy version of you. Fantasy version of Erika is never stressed out. She's never tired. She never gains weight. She never has to work out, right? She can eat whatever she wants and will sleep through the night. If she has like, a giant meal at midnight, and she just goes right to sleep. That's fantasy Erika. Reality Erika has to work out. She watches what she eats. She can't eat like 3 hours before bed, or she won't sleep. So getting really clear around that. And then for business, my favorite question, and I'll leave you with this, is, what do you want to normalize? Because so many people, especially with service-based businesses, and that is a huge, huge piece of my customer base, is people with service-based businesses, because they solve multiple problems. And so, like, it's actually a question that I very rarely ask my customers, like, what's the problem that this thing solves? But I ask them, what do you want to normalize? And it gets their brain firing in completely different ways. And so that is definitely one of my questions on, what do you want to normalize?
You've asked me that question my answer always slightly changes, but the variation that it's gotten to now is normalizing people talking about their fears, talking about the things that seem uncomfortable or the things that bubble under the surface. Because going back to viewpoints, if we don't take the time to cultivate it now and we lie to ourselves, like so many people lie to themselves in relationships. I've done it in the past numerous times, but then it's going to come out and wreak havoc in our lives in some way. So I also view cultivating viewpoints as this chance to get radically honest with yourself about who you are, so that when opportunities present themselves, you're not questioning who you are. You've taken the time to know it, and then you get to compare. Does this line up? And that seems like what you did with your husband. And I had made a list right before I made Jeff as well. And Jeff had a list, and then he fell out of the sky in the park. So
what was on his list?
His list is a spreadsheet because he's so analytical. Mine's like a bullet. Mine's a bulleted list.
Mine's 2 points.
His is like 10, and they're weighted, and it's in a spreadsheet, and it's not how my brain works, but it cracks me up.
What was one of the things on there? Can you share it?
Able to express their needs, because he'd been hurt in the past by people not being willing to express what they needed. And again, going back to lying to ourselves about who we are and what we want. Sometimes we want to not be alone, and that takes precedence over who we truly are and what we truly want out of life. And I think the work that you do and helping people cultivate viewpoints is so important, obviously in the context of business, which I know is how you love to share it, and also in the context of our personal lives.
I love it. That's awesome. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I want to let you share, if people want to connect with you, because everything you put out is always so fun, and you always have the best fashion advice, or like the newest, like the latest product that's out that is in the most glamorous packaging. Like, people need to follow you just for those things too. So what is your handle on all the places one more time?
So my online home is dailywhip.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter where I share more about viewpoints and all things business. And then you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Daily Whip. And then on TikTok, I do these little audio notes. And it's just like a little daily whipping. And those are just on TikTok. You'll see my portfolio on TikTok.
I love it. And those are like daily whippings for how to think, which I love. It's like a great midday reframe when you put them out. So thank you so much for being here and for chatting all things viewpoints.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You've just finished listening to another episode of Make It Mentionable with me, your host, Alyssa Patmos. If you're looking for more in between episodes, then sign up for The Peel. It's my free newsletter that gives tips for how to navigate whatever life dishes. And it's also the place where I share the juiciest of stories. To check it out, head on over to alyssapatmos.com/The Peel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.